Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, and this is my second response to something that the Liberal Hivemind said in his video about the SJW who was held to account by a pro-life speaker. And, you know, he does talk about the irresponsibility that the abortion rights movement pushes. And I think it's less, first of all, it's an extremely complex thing because the abortion lobby is a huge, unholy alliance. And a decision was made back in the late 1960s to put the "it's a woman's right to choose" as the face of it. Okay, but that is just the face. That's the surface. That's their advertising thing, is that women need this freedom. But you've got the irresponsible men. Okay, the Playboy Foundation, the we want to be able to just pork as many women as possible and then vacuum out any unwanted fetuses without ever having to pay any child support. There's that, you know, the Hugh Hefner model of life, where women are just something you wet your weenie in, and then if she gets clogged up with the fetus, you have her vacuumed out. So there's that part of it. There's the eugenics, that only certain people deserve to be born and everybody else is undesirable and needs to be gotten rid of. There's the population zealots, which, you know, that anything that prevents a useless feeder, you know, from being born is a good thing. There are the female sexual libertines. So you can't just look at one aspect and say this is what the abortion lobby is all about. And the perplexing thing about this is that the abortion lobby, how am I trying to put this together? They're becoming more and more sucked into abortion as an end in itself. And this seems to be inevitable. And when our hooded friend was talking about, you know, there are things that are wrong, there are things that are right. And I think there's something inherent about abortion that once you accept it, it twists something inside you. And you will see that the woman herself stops mattering, even to the people who have themselves convinced that they're in it for the women. And when I worked at Life Dynamics, I listened to years and years and years of tapes of National Abortion Federation meetings and risk management seminars. And they'd all be there in their, you know, general session talking about how they're doing it. Make sure you have the catch in the voice, for the women. And there was an interesting point there. You know, they had a show of hands. How many of you, if your daughter got pregnant unexpectedly out of wedlock, how many of you would recommend an abortion? And they did a count of hands. How many of you, if your son was the father, if he got a girl pregnant out of wedlock, how many of you would advocate for an abortion? And it was far more raised their hands. You know, at some level, they know that this isn't about helping the woman. And there's the irresponsibility for everybody. Why should the workplace improve if she's perfectly willing to scrape Junior out and flush him into the New York City sewer system in order to have a better job? You know, why should, you know, a guy be willing to step up to fatherhood if he can just, you know, be stopping pro-choice women who are going to climb on the abortion table and get rid of it? But I've talked a lot, when I talk about abortion deaths, how for the abortion clinic, the woman kind of becomes invisible. It all becomes about getting rid of that fetus. And the woman becomes invisible. She becomes irrelevant almost. And I've seen cases where women they're hemorrhaging. They're literally dying. And the clinic staff would put them in a wheelchair and shove them out the door so they don't bleed to death on the premises, so that they just die somewhere else. And you can't pretend that the abortion lobby that knows this is happening and that facilitates it, that they haven't become in thrall to abortion. There's something about it that just corrupts. And we saw it with illegal abortion where, and this was something that astonished me when I started studying illegal abortion deaths, because I bought into the idea that, well, when abortion was illegal, you botched an abortion, you went to prison. And then I found out that it's much more similar to the modern situation like we had with Kermit Gosnell, that it all depends on how in thrall people are to abortion in that area. And just as with Kermit Gosnell, this access uber alles, and it's okay if the women die, it's okay if they get mangled, it's okay if you have flea-infested cats crapping all over the floor, it's all right if you're wrapping these women in blankets that get washed once a week, if the staff happen to get around to it while they're lying there moaning, doped half to death on blood-stained recliners. The National Abortion Federation had that Kermit Gosnell working 1 day a week at one of their clinics. National Abortion Federation clinics referred to him. He was not an outlier. The idea that once the idea comes into the woman's head that abortion is even a possibility, it's like this, it gets sucked into this, the abortion must happen, the abortion must happen. And the only tragedy is if the baby fails to die. The woman dies, it's only the people who love her and the pro-lifers who get upset. The entire even ordinary pro-choice citizens are like, well, you make an omelet, you break some eggs. And all surgery has risks. Well, do you really think most doctors are operating the way American abortion clinics operate? And I know this is kind of muddled, but I'm just kind of reacting here. This is a reaction video. And it's in a way, it's so much more complicated, but in a way, it's so much simpler. It's complicated because people have a lot of different motives for deciding that abortion is acceptable and perhaps even laudable, and people just getting sucked into where their entire life becomes about abortion, making sure abortion happens, later and later abortions, and making sure that the baby doesn't escape if it manages to be born alive. And actually I came to believe in Satan before I came to believe in God. And it was because I was looking at abortion and I'm like, you've got all these people who are going into it with noble motives. We don't want women to die from coat hanger abortions. We don't want women to be trapped in poverty. We don't want children to be born into these horrific circumstances. We don't want children to be born with terrible disabilities. And what does it get turned into? It gets turned into this hideous beast. And, to me, it's pretty clear that Satan's behind it. The people who aren't religious may see it differently, but I wasn't religious at the time. I came to believe in Satan before I came to believe in Jesus, because of seeing what the abortion lobby really is when you scrape away the surface. And unfortunately, this group of people on the street that they're talking to at one point saying, yeah, kill it if it's 10 months old, if that's what the mother chooses. That's what happens once you embrace the idea that abortion is acceptable or even a positive. You're eventually going to end up there, and unless somebody helps you turn around.